Today is a very special episode of Crystal Uncorked. My guests are Rob and Leah Davis, and this is a story that we are going to share today that is something that is one of the hardest things that you could ever imagine going through as a parent, and it's also a story of hope. In this episode, Rob and Leah and I talk about their son, Blake. Blake has changed the world and will continue to do so. And in this episode, you're going to hear how. You're going to hear about his story and what the family has been through and what they've done out of a time of extreme darkness to find some sort of light and make it out on the other end of losing their son. And it's a pretty inspiring story. It's a pretty emotional story, so definitely grab some Kleenexes. And in this episode, Rob and Leah and I ask you, the listener, to do a good deed in Blake's name. This episode is coming out on April 21st, which would have been Blake's 5th birthday. And so it is our dedication to him. It is our way of sharing his story, to continue to share his story. And we want more people to just do good deeds in Blake's name, especially in April, but continue to do them. And just think of this special boy on his birthday. So you're going to learn about these good deeds and people who are doing them. It's really amazing, this movement that has been created by Rob and Leah. And so, like I said, grab some Kleenex and let's dive into this episode. Hello, I'm Crystal Vilkaitis. I'm a curious, wine-loving entrepreneur who loves to learn and have open and honest conversations. Join me and my amazing guests as we talk about all sorts of relatable business and life stuff. It's my goal that you'll have fun, learn something new, and get inspired. Wine is not required, but is recommended. This is Crystal Uncorked. Rob and Leah Davis, thank you so much for being here. I know how busy you guys are. You have a new baby at home. Rob's working the real estate in the crazy Southern California market. So thank you for taking the time. I'm thrilled you're here.
Thank you for having us.
We got to start with what we're drinking. I want to hear from you guys. What do you got, Leah?
Today, I'm going margaritas. It's a special day, a special event, and we're happy to be celebrating with you for our little guy. And so margaritas it is.
Yes.
And I have the Bell's Lighthearted IPA.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
Yeah.
Nice choice.
Thank you.
I'm going with champagne for today. I have a funny story about that because this bottle, it's nothing fancy here. It's a tiny little bottle that I got from my Costco Advent Calendar wine box from December.
I love it.
They do that. It was really cool. I still have this because I only like to drink champagne when I'm celebrating. I haven't had a whole lot to celebrate, so today is a good day for that. And I'm here alone in the house. I had such a hard time opening this bottle to where I was sweating. I'm not kidding. I was sweating, wiping it away just to open this bottle. So worked really hard for it.
You have earned it.
I know, I really did. So this is a very special episode because it's going to air on April 21st, which is Blake's birthday. And so we are celebrating him. We are cheersing to him. Happy birthday to Blake. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
And to you.
Okay, so I just want to tell people first how we know each other.
Yeah.
I met you guys, Dustin and I met you guys through Robin, Leah's sister. Mm-hmm. Robin is a dear friend of mine, also the copywriter at Crystal Media. I'm very lucky to have her in my life on many ways. She's also, yes, I know, right? She's like the auntie of the universe, I feel like. We need to make an award for her or something. And she has such a special bond with Scarlett. How old is Scarlett now?
She's 6.
6?
Yes.
That's insane.
It's hard to believe.
Hard to believe. Gorgeous, smart girl. I feel like she's just going to take over the world. She's so impressive to me. And Auntie, then you have a new baby. Baby is how old?
New baby Sky. She's 2 months.
2 months.
So
2 months old. Oh my goodness. And
if
I
you
hope
look
to
at
meet her
tired
soon.
faces, there's a reason for it.
They are.
You guys look great, but I'm sure that there's some sleepless nights.
A few.
Quite a few.
Yeah. So we met through Robin, and Dustin, my boyfriend, has become close with Rob. I think he just has this, you guys have this total bromance, which is really cute. And he was thinking he'd be a part of this interview too, and then he left. So apparently he's not going to say hi with us, but he sends his love. I know. I just want to start talking about Blake here. Let's dive in. So there's a lot to cover. We're going to do our best in this episode and this time together. I'm really glad that you guys are here, though, to share about your special boy. On July 4th of 2017, your lives got flipped upside down. I want you guys to take me just a few days before that, when things were a little bit more normal, and tell us about Blake and what he was like and what life was like then.
Kick it off?
Sure. So we had our daughter Scarlett, and Blake came and joined our family a year and a half later. So they were very close, both in diapers. It was a hectic time chasing both of them around, but they both have really bright, beautiful spirits, and were just very happy and playful and fun. Blake, we always called our smiley meatball because he was a tank, but always had a smile on his face. When Scarlett was born, she was just over 5 pounds, and Blake was over 9, almost 10. So almost twice her size, and that was surprising from the get-go how big he was. But his personality followed suit. As we kind of got to know him, he was he was a lot. He was the kid that as soon as he could walk, he just wanted to get down. He wanted to go. He wanted to explore. He didn't want to be coddled or held. He was just ready
on the move.
Yes. And as soon as Scarlett could start, if she was playing with something, he was all up in it. He wanted to knock it down. We ended up giving him the nickname Zilla. And even though his name was Blake, Scarlett actually couldn't pronounce Blake at the time. So she started calling him Bach or Bockies instead of Blakies. And so we started calling him Bachzilla.
Oh, I love it.
Anyway, so to our family, we actually reference him a lot as Bockies. He was just a lot of fun. Before that date, though, so he was 14 months at the time. So he was walking, he was on the move, he wanted to explore everything, but he wasn't talking much yet, just some. And fortunately, we did get the opportunity to see more of his personality, but that was actually after the 4th of July incident.
Okay, and let's go there. So let's talk about what happened on July 4th.
So July 4th, Leah always likes we get outfits for the kids and take pictures and do the whole thing. And so a couple days before that, I had taken both kids to a nearby park, and we'd had a little picnic, and Leah was like, oh, that sounds like a lot of fun. I'm home. Let's do that, and then we'll, go celebrate July 4th. So we did that. We went to the park, hung out, let the kids play a little bit. And, when it comes to photos, it's all about the lighting. Well, the lighting's got to be just right, and so I'm just like, I've heard it. And I was like, babe, if you want to take these pictures, you're going to miss your window. Let's get there and let's get the kids' clothes changed and get the light that you want and whatever else. And so Blake had just taken a nap before the park, but he was still young and kids sleep a lot. So you don't really think too much of it. We just kind of slightly lethargic at the park, but nothing alarming.
No.
Went to get into the car, and as many kids do, he kind of threw a fit. Leah had Blake, and I had Scarlett, and so we were on opposite sides of the car. And she's trying to get Blake in the car seat.
He's
pissed.
kicking and throwing his hips. He doesn't want to get locked in. He didn't want to leave the park.
Yeah, he didn't want to leave. So it's like, okay, that's normal. And so yeah, he thrusts his hips forward as kids do. You know, it's like they get smart. They know how to. You can't buckle me in if you can't get the seatbelt around me. And so, you know, it's not a big deal. And so anyway, so Leah went to go buckle him in, and like shortly after that, like, I mean, seconds after that, like you just kind of saw his head like kind of drop like he went to sleep. And, you know, I'd said something, I go, oh man, I said, he is tired, you know, look at that. He just crashed out, you know. And I was buckling Scarlett in, so I'm on the other, I can see through the car. And I look at him for just like an extra second, and I go, is he breathing? And Leah goes, what? And I was like, is he fucking breathing? You know, and Leah, like, she can't get the seatbelt, like, undone fast enough. You know, and I run around the side of the car and I grab, like, he's got a little sippy cup, and I, like, squirt him in the face, and it's just enough that he, like, takes, like, a deep breath, and Leah just, like, rips him out of the car seat, and he just, like, falls back and goes limp and turns blue, like, right there in her arms.
I mean, you don't ever... He was to us, he was a perfectly healthy, normal little kid.
There was never anything alarming, no red flags, no...
You get them buckled in, and you don't think they're just going to stop breathing.
Right.
And so, anyway, it was extremely terrifying because we didn't know what was going on. And I'm so happy that Rob had said that, because I mean, you could have easily assumed he needed to sleep or he needed a nap. And, you know, I mean, after the fact, we even told doctors that, and they said, you know, had we left him in that moment, he probably wouldn't have made it home.
Oh my gosh.
He wouldn't have made it, and they would have said, because of his age, they would have just said, oh, it was sudden infant death syndrome.
Mm-hmm. And
there would have been no rhyme or reason why, no investigation, just
that was it.
He didn't make it.
So, but that didn't happen. We ripped him out, and anyway, then we're terrified. And, you know, when we go back to think through this moment, it really, to us, was like a complete movie scene. We are in the middle of a San Diego suburb where there are so many people around all the time. You know, the parks are, you know, bustling and the cars are going by. And in that specific moment, there was nobody. There was nobody at the park. There were no cars on the street because
5 minutes before that, there was another family at the park with their kids, people walking by the sidewalk. And I always describe it. It's like that scene in a movie where all of a sudden it's like, you know, there's something dramatic happening, and then they, like, zoom out, and it's like you're, like, in the middle of this, like, desolate desert. It's like that's alone. Literally how it felt.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fucking insane.
So we didn't know this park was new to us, even though it's not very far. So we didn't know the name of the park. We didn't know what street we were on, you know. And, I mean, it's only a mile and a half away, but it was just a neighborhood street. So we didn't know it, or we weren't familiar with it. And so you couldn't have felt more alone. And then second nightmare is, how loud can you yell for help? Is this going to be one of those scenes where it's not loud enough, you know? And anyway, so both of us were screaming for help and call 911, and we ended up there was one house that had a garage door open.
Garage door was open.
And we just bombarded this house and asked them to call 911, and of course they're terrified. They don't know what's going on. There's random people just coming in.
I beat on that door so hard, I'm surprised it didn't break, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I bet.
And so it was this couple, and they were actually speaking Russian. So they spoke English, but it was a little bit broken, and they were communicating to each other in a different language. So I wasn't tracking everything that they were saying, which made it a little bit more complicated, but they were still, wanting to help me. Another neighbor came in from around the corner, and they didn't know each other, but of course it was just strangers coming together to try to help us. And Rob's, calling for the ambulance, and I have Blake in my arms, and we're trying to keep Scarlett kind of at bay. So Rob and she were outside, and then, I'm very alone with Blake, who's not doing well at all. But ultimately, we got through to the dispatcher. The ambulance came, within 5 minutes, probably. Yeah. It was the longest 5 minutes of our life. But all of a sudden, you have these heroes in uniform busting through the door. They said, we'll take him, and, trying to call me. I went in the ambulance with Blake, and, of course they're asking questions. Could he have been stung by a bee? Does he have any allergies? Did something happen? And no, we have no idea what's actually happening. I so wish we did. But fortunately they were able to stabilize him in the back. We could hear him crying, and the driver who was calming me was saying, it's a good thing. He's crying, and so that was the very start of what ended up being quite a journey. Mm-hmm. We ended up going to the closest hospital. They stabilized him, and then they moved us on to Rady's,
which is a children's hospital
about 2 hours later. Everything kind of then was peaceful.
It was normal.
He was breathing on his own. He started to seem like he was acting like himself, maybe a little lethargic, but it was like, if you flash forward to that evening, it was, what was that? Like, what just happened,
Right. And at that point, did they have any idea, within those kind of 12-hour period, any idea what was happening?
No. Yeah. We had a train of people coming through. We were not admitted at this time to the ICU. We were just admitted to their respiratory unit.
We didn't even go to the emergency room.
No. We did at Scripps, yeah.
But then he was so normal at that point in time and stabilized that they were like, well, we don't need to go to the emergency room. If it was an issue with his breathing, we'll just send him up to respiratory.
Wow. That's crazy.
But the people there, were saying, sometimes things happen, and they were expecting to release us already the next day. They were looking for things like, could there be a blockage in his trachea, which of course at the time we thought was going to be the worst thing that could happen. And,
right.
We had no idea what the future was going to bring. Yeah. But, again, they were looking for allergies. Could he be diabetic? Definitely doing their due diligence and trying to contemplate what it could be. And because nothing was really showing itself,
but
they were getting ready to release us.
They kept us overnight, and it was like I said. He's not on any IVs. He's not on. I don't think he was on anything at that point in time.
He was breathing room air.
Yeah, room air, no oxygen, no nothing, and just we were out walking the hallway, just strolling around the unit, and everybody's kind of looking like, what the hell's that kid doing here? And it's these other kids are having all these trouble breathing, and he's just like, come on, Dad, let's walk. I'm like, okay. And so they came in, and that's what they told us. They said, we're going to have them come in, because the only thing that we had ever noticed through the last couple of weeks, was that his cry had changed a little bit, where he was at that almost kind of 2-year-old toddler, I got lungs and I'm going to use them and you're going to know it, to more of a breathy, kind of like a baby cry.
Yeah, it was kind of hoarse. If you had gone to a concert and lost your voice, it was just a little bit raspy when he would cry instead of a toddler cry that was a lot louder. Yeah. And fortunately, we brought that up to them because they decided that it was worth investigating that, because they were ruling everything else out. So we were waiting for ENT to come. This is the next day, to come and scope his throat.
The guy told us before. He's like, we're going to have ENT come in. They're going to scope him. If they don't find anything,
we're going to let you go.
And that was his wording, was sometimes weird things happen. It's like, and you want me to just accept it sometimes? Which, don't get me wrong. Right. We have friends of ours where their kids have had a seizure and then it never happened again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Right. So it's like, we know that.
Yeah.
But that's a hard pill to swallow when you're on the receiving end.
And actually, while we were there that first night, I had several people say that weird things had happened to their kid that had never happened again. But you don't leave feeling comforted like you got to the bottom of it. So we knew that we were going to be released after this scope, and we're just kind of waiting for it. And so that was the next day, and these people came in, and essentially I had to hold Blake on my lap, and they were going to put this, I don't know, what was it? Oh, yeah. One of us had him on our lap. And,
Right.
And anyway, they were just going to put this little tube down his throat to look at his vocal cord.
They do it through his nose. Because they want to be above the vocal cord.
So, like,
they go
down.
above they go in through the nostril and they go down so they can see right there.
And so anyway, when they did that, of course, with any kid, that's uncomfortable. And
with any person, I think.
And yeah, I mean, you're reasoning with a 14-month-old. And so he didn't like it. He threw a tantrum. And in that moment, he started losing his color again. And so now what was happening at the park was now happening in front of the medical professionals. And it was emergency all the way. So, the hospital has a system to alert people. So all of a sudden the ICU members are coming up to the room. It was chaos. They were like, why is this kid not on oxygen? Why is he not hooked up to anything? And it was like, we are ready to go home.
Wow.
And so anyway, that was the second scary episode, which was just day 2. We then moved to the ICU, where they're now proceeding to run different tests and, kind of evaluate what they just saw and what was happening. And then the really scary news.
Well, one of the tests that they
rolling.
ran was they did the EKG, and they came back and they said they noticed an abnormality in the EKG.
So EKG then led to an echo, and all of a sudden we have cardiologists in front of us saying, this is serious. So it went from not knowing what it is to we are on a very terrible end of the spectrum. And we were admitted then into the ICU. At this time it was the pediatric ICU. They have 2 different ones. We ultimately ended up in the cardiovascular ICU. But so we're now in a different unit. We've been to the first hospital. We've been to the main floor for respiratory. Then we're in the PICU, and
this is all like over 2 days, right? Like
Yes.
you went from we're taking family pictures in the park and our
Right.
family is happy and healthy and great
We went from we're going to a barbecue to our kid has died twice, and now we're in our second intensive care unit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Within 40
How
years.
does your brain keep up with that? How are you like? Did you feel how do you do that?
That's a great question, Crystal. I'll tell you what, if I ever come up with an answer for that, I'll let you know.
Right. It's probably just flight or Flight or fight?
Flight
Like
or
you're
flight,
just
yeah.
adrenaline.
It's just adrenaline. Yes, 100%.
But,
Oof.
I'm blown away. The average people don't know that families are dealing with this every single day. It is like a different world once you walk through those walls, and there's so many families dealing with this all the time. And
Like, not even like sidebar here, but like not even like dealing with it. We were there for 3 months. There's kids that have lived their whole lives there.
Yeah.
Years.
Oh.
And it's like to think like that's their normal.
Right. That they just grow up in the hospital.
So nonetheless, they decided, they were bringing in a different set of professionals at this point, because now we're talking heart and lungs.
We know what it is now.
Well, we think. They think they knew what it was, but they still had to undergo tests. And
Well, they just didn't know. They knew what it was. They just didn't know to what extent it was. Diagnosis was ultimately pulmonary hypertension. Hypertension.
And what does that mean?
So hypertension is blood pressure. You see it on commercials. You suffer from hypertension. You suffer from high blood pressure. Pulmonary is lungs. So you have high blood pressure in your lungs. Ultimately, what happens is your lungs are actually a very low pressure organ. So when they do your blood pressure on your arm and it's 125 over whatever, well, the 125, that's your body's blood pressure. Your lung blood pressure, there's no way to actually measure that. And so the only 2 ways that they have to measure that, if you will,
or
assess it, is one is they do an echo, which is essentially just an ultrasound, and it's just like a Doppler radar, which guesses, hey, with this much backflow, we're guessing it's around this much pressure, but the only way to do it accurately is with a cath, as they call it. So you actually go into the cath lab, they go in through their thigh a lot of time, and they run this thing all the way up to the heart, and then it can actually measure precisely what the pressures are in all 4 chambers of the heart. But obviously they have to be sedated with that. And the cool thing about pulmonary hypertension is you don't ever want sedation, because that's like the exact opposite of what you're trying to achieve.
So this was probably our 4th day, and there was a nurse that came in and just made an offhanded comment about, oh, so you're going into the cath lab? Okay. Well, sedation is the enemy, or something. It was something that struck me to the point where my anxiety could not have been higher. And I think Rob was with Scarlett that morning, and I'm like, you need to get down here. So they're going to run these tests, and it was a super high stakes test, but we had to do it. There was no other way to actually determine what was going on or how we could help him if we didn't know. And that, honestly, I mean, there's so many emotional moments, but this one where we had to let him go into this test, this procedure, we didn't know if that was goodbye.
Right.
And, I mean, this kid, he literally had 5 lives, and this was one of the ones where, we were a part of the decision of sending him in. And that one was really hard. And I had it out with the anesthesiologist just because it was my kid, and I just wanted to make sure that he was taking the best care of my kid, because even though every kid is special, I was so terrified. I was so scared in the moment, and I just wanted to make sure that
First of all, from what you know of Leah, who's like the most kind-hearted, sweet person you'll ever meet on the face of the earth.
Yeah.
And, she's not confrontational. She's not rude. And it was at that moment right there where it's like she looked this dude in his face and for lack of better terminology said, look, dude, that's my fucking kid. Cut it out. It was great. Right. It was great. She literally, he stepped back and was like, oh, I did something wrong. It was like, yeah, you did.
It was just mama bear mode.
Totally.
You're just not going to mess with my cubs.
No. And not at all.
That was my moment.
That was a funny moment, though. It was a funny moment.
Nonetheless,
you saw her in action, man.
Oh.
It was just so terrifying. And so, we're barely speaking to each other because we're so nervous. We get through this one procedure. We're waiting in the waiting room, and we have the social worker come out and say, you know what, he did great, we're on the other side of it. And then we had the nurse come through and said he was so good in there, and we had another confirmation. Then the anesthesiologist came through and gave us a thumbs up. And then next thing you know, we're hearing paged over the hospital sound system, code blue, and whatever Blake's room number was. All of a sudden you see everybody racing back down the hall, and this was number 3, where this kid nearly, even the doctors, they say, well, this kid died 5 times. It was just the way that they're talking about it. It's really unbelievable. Nonetheless, this was another time they were able to revive him. And by the next day, they decided that his state had become so
but that was the last time that we saw him awake for a month.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So when they brought him back, but they decided that he was too fragile at that point in time. So at that point in time, from then moving forward, he was in a medically induced coma for 30 days.
Wow.
And in order to give his heart and his lungs a break, they hooked him up to life support. It's called ECMO.
That was a couple days later, but yeah.
But basically, this was going to be the opportunity for his body to tell us if he can endure this or not. And so that machine is amazing and also terrifying. It's basically cycling blood outside of your body, and it's oxygenating it for you. So it completely bypasses your lung and heart and just allows the body to survive. And so he was on that for a week and ultimately was able to get off of it, but we were still in the hospital for months. But it was really in that week of desperation that, the other side of this story was born, which is all of the good energy, positive energy, good deeds, and the beauty, the yin to the yang.
Right. It started then, kind of, because what my understanding of this part of the story is that people, of course, are reaching out, being like, what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? We're praying for you. We're thinking all the things, right? And so what you guys said is just do something good for someone else in Blake's name and tell us about these stories, because we are hating our lives in this fucking hospital and going through this. We need some kind of goodness in our lives to keep us going. And so your tribe showed up and started doing these amazing things for people, sharing in the Facebook group that you created. And you guys would read them in the hospital and read them out loud to Blake too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was, we were in there, and it's like, I mean, we met with our social worker there every day, who, we're like still connected to. She's awesome. And we were just like, Maria, like, what the hell do we tell these people to do? You know what I mean? It's like
everyone wants to do something, but we were helpless.
We don't
ourselves.
know. We don't know what to
know.
do. You know, it's like babysit Scarlett. Oh yeah, wait a minute. We have grandparents and auntie, and it's like, nope, we don't need that. And it's like we don't need anything. We just need him to be okay.
Yeah.
You know. And
she said, give them something to do.
Give them something to do. And then, it's like, we're not pulling anything off the table, especially when, your kid is in that situation. So it's, I mean, we got Western medicine going. We got Eastern medicine going. We got energy healers.
Yeah.
Like we got it all. And, we were talking to our energy healer guy, you know what I mean? And that's when Leah, I know we came home that day, and it was just like a shit day. And we came home, and I was like, well, I'm going to go check them. Like somebody would stay. We never left him alone. Somebody was always in the hospital with him. I think that's important to me anyway.
Yeah.
But, we came home to shower and whatever else, and I said, well, I'm going to go check the mail. Or no, you went to go check the mail.
Yeah, we hadn't showered in days at this point. And so it was, let's go home, get our bags repacked, and shower up, and then come back and figure out life.
Yeah, so I'm here doing something in the house.
And you were in the shower, I think, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go down to the mailbox. And
it's like the whole way home, like, we're not, like, really talking to each other. Like, we're just emotionally exhausted.
Drained.
Yeah.
And she comes in the door, and it's like, a typical husband thing where I'm just like, oh, God, what is it now? And she comes in, and she's like, babe, I got it. I figured it out. And I'm just like, what do I got to do? And she's just like, no. So I went to go get the mail, and there was this guy, and he was trying to find, this certain condo. And so I showed him where the map was, and then I just I led his pre-COVID, of course, you could talk to people then.
Right.
I showed him where to go, and da-da-da. She's like, what if we just ask people to help people or do nice things? Like, just don't suck and be a good person. You know what I mean? Like, basically that's what it was. And so, so we just kind of did that. And
it was this moment where I looked horrid, right? I hadn't showered in days, and I felt like he could smell me probably from 5 feet away.
In the car.
And I didn't want to talk to him, but he was just staring at the map of our complex, and I actually got the mail and I walked away. And then I decided, I was like, in this moment, okay, I'm going to go back and I'm going to go help this guy find whatever it is he's looking for. And he was so grateful. That was it. All I did was give my time and turn around and try to point him in the right direction. And he was like, I would have been standing here for an hour. And anyway, so I was able to help him on the way, and that was like the light bulb moment. Like, it didn't take much to do something, even though I didn't want to in that moment, and I just felt like that good energy in Blake's name could make all the difference.
What we need.
That's what we need to do. We need to find some shred of positivity among this wreck that was our life in at this time. And so Rob got on board. We kind of shared that with our friends, and then we had a friend actually create this Facebook page for Blake. And all of a sudden, these stories just started being shared, and we were reading them like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. This is so amazing. And we would just sit there. Blake, again, was in, a medically induced coma. And so we would just hold his hand and tell him how special he is and what a difference he's making. And anyway, how much he's loved. And anyway, I'm so grateful that we were even able to share those things with him. And we felt supported, there was really nothing that everybody could do, but we were hearing from people, and people who were really, there for us and who showed up, and people you wouldn't even expect or that we hadn't talked to in years. And then it was strangers who just felt for us, or this, the story had touched them in some way, because now people are doing a good deed and it connected with them. And they heard Blake's story and they joined the group. And, it was just this avalanche of goodness. Yes. And so that turned out to be really special. And then Blake really started to improve, and he started to get, just get better. And, he really started beating the odds. We ultimately had people on the staff who were not confident that he was going to make it. And they were thrilled. Of course, they didn't tell us that at the time. This is all in hindsight.
Right, yes.
And so he started to make these really great strides. And it was a long haul. But we got to the point, ultimately, where we were released from the hospital and we got to bring him home.
Right. And life looked a little different when you guys brought him home. I know, because then he's on medication. He had a port, right, that you had to put the medication in through that way. You probably are also just terrified every second of the day that something happens. I feel like I would be. That's just a whole new situation you're dealing with, but so grateful he's home.
Right.
How long was he home for?
Yeah.
A year and a half?
Yeah. Ultimately, there's another year and a half, right? We had a couple hospital stays that were, between 4 days and a week. And ultimately, we were in the hospital a total of 5 months, but none of the other stays were as significant as that first one. But you're right. We were ecstatic that we got to bring him home, but there's also this weight of responsibility that we had a team of people taking care of him, and now it's us. And it's trying to figure out life. We even while we were in the hospital, we had people tell us, you guys need to get out of here. You need to take time for each other. This is a relationship killer. And, we have certainly had a hard time. We've come a long way.
Yeah. Well, that's something I wanted to ask because, I watched Oprah when I was a kid, and one episode that stood out to me, she had a doctor on that was saying, we take out the things on the people that are closest to us that we love the most. And so you're going through the worst thing that each of you have ever been through. You're the closest to one another. I wondered, did that hurt you guys? Were you taking it out on each other? Did you become a team and were stronger? Is it just every day was different? How did that work out for you guys?
Yeah, all of that.
Yeah. We might answer that question differently.
Yeah, I think genuinely, I think all of it. I think there's moments, like we've even noticed it, when the stress is there, and it's go time. It's we are one unit, yes. But as soon as that pressure is lifted just a little bit, and then it's just and it's but then as soon as it shit hit the fan again, it's come back together, conquer, and then fight about it later,
Sure.
But I mean, like you said, there's so many different complexities to it.
Yeah.
He came home on at least a dozen different medications. Some of them were daily. Some of them were 3 times a day. Some of them were 2 times a day. Some of them had to be cold. Some of them not. Room temperature. It was juggling all these things. He was followed up by 6 different disciplines. So there were different doctor's appointments and things that needed to be done and labs. And the bane of our existence, which is everything insurance. Nothing went through. You had to follow up with people. You're on hold for 2 hours. Then the system hangs up on you. You just need a medication. It has to be here by tomorrow. It was just chaos. So of course, like that's not a way to live life. And the second, I mean, not even second, it's probably the 18th thing is also you have this medically fragile kid and his care or his abilities are subjective. So it was, okay, well, he's a toddler, so of course he's going to be very active and want to run, but how far is too far? Can he run across to the park to the slide, or should we hold him back? Or if he gets too upset, he could have another crisis. So if his sister takes something from him, is that going to lead to a crisis? And is that going to be the event that ends his life? So you have people.
But then there's being a parent too. We had that conversation at the hospital. It's like my anticipation and my goal was for this kid to grow for a long time. So I'm also trying to not raise a jerk kid.
Yeah.
So it's like he does something wrong. What do? Do you not yell at him? Do you not get upset? Because then it's like, well, now I can just do whatever I want to do. Right. Well, then the sister says, well, I can do whatever I want to do because he does whatever he wants. Well, he's different. So you can't, what I mean? It's like, wait a minute here. It's like. Yeah.
I mean, there was so much of it. And that caused a lot of friction between us because, there isn't a right or wrong answer.
There's
you
not
just
a
see
book
it.
For
you
that.
just see it differently. And that was hard to parent and it was hard to make those decisions. And there was also not a way to take a break either because, like you said, he had a port. Our nurse practitioner that we love said it best that basically when we had to give him his or change out his line, which hurt, by the way, we were basically sticking needles in his arm. It was basically like tackling a raccoon. No. It's like you have the strength of this animal who doesn't want something to happen and yet you can't reason with him. And anyway, so of course we tried every approach under the sun, but we also weren't going to lie to him. So, we would not tell him what was going to happen until it had to happen. But those moments were so stressful. And it was, at the end of the day, this device is used by millions of people. And for a reasonable adult, totally a piece of cake. For a kid that is 14 months old or 2 years old even, it is a nightmare. And, we had to be a team through those moments. And then once it was in his arm, he couldn't actually bathe. So it wasn't just throwing your kid in the tub if he gets dirty at the park. Now you have to clean him up or keep it clean. And, even just getting in the tub was a process that required both of us to be very attentive.
Yeah, once he was stabilized, we were able to disconnect him from the pump, but only for a very, very short amount of time. And then the thing that was in his arm couldn't get wet. So then it's, okay, you strip him down. Okay, now you have to get saran wrap, tape, all this stuff ready, and then go, okay, you got everything ready? Yep, got everything ready. Okay, disconnect, wrap his arm in saran wrap, tape it off so it doesn't get wet. Okay, now it's 2 people, one to hold the arm, the other one to scrub the kid so he doesn't, you know what I mean? Yeah. And it's like, okay, now the clock's ticking, let's go, let's hook him back up, let's run the medication again. And it's just like,
it was stressful.
Woo!
It was stressful.
It's like the NASCAR pit crew.
Yes.
Giving a kid a bath.
Yeah. So, I mean, of course we loved having him home and we loved having the moments where we could play together and he could play with his sister and we were trying to make life as normal as we could, but it was also incredibly stressful every day. Every day it was like a 13 out of 10.
So you guys were home with him for a few months and then in the fall, Well, I remember we celebrated it was his second birthday in the park, right?
Yes. Yeah, we didn't know that he was going to make it to his second birthday. So
Right.
we definitely had a big to-do at a neighborhood park for his second birthday. And then actually the next 4th of July, we ended up doing a big celebration also because we wanted to do, so the memory that we had 4th of July at that neighborhood park, we wanted to replace with a good memory. And so we decided to have a celebration there and make it a toy drive for Rady's. And that was actually one of, I think, the most beautiful days that we had as a family and with him. Just the amount of people, the pouring of support, the amount of people that came to the park, whether it was for a half hour or for 4 hours. You know, this park that we had this horrific situation then was flooded with love, people bringing toys for Rady's. We ended up delivering them to the CVICU, which is the unit we actually lived in for those 3 months. And it was like the single biggest the biggest single party donation that they had. And anyway, it was just so uplifting. And I'm so glad that we also have that memory at that park too.
Totally. Yeah, because that's where it all started. And I love that you guys wanted to change the feeling of that park and make it positive and celebrate where you are today. I remember pulling up and the fire truck, is it like engine 24? Is that what it? Yeah. Yes. They were there, and you gotta share that story too. And I just immediately start crying, and I'm like, oh my God, this is gonna be so emotional, but so like happy, emotional, right? Like people just showed up. You threw an amazing party. Something I love so much about you guys is how giving you are with doing this toy drive and giving back and doing what you can through such hard times and living. You're behind closed doors. What people aren't seeing that you're having to deal with every single day is so heavy. But talk about Engine 24.
Yeah, that station was the one that responded to his call, and
we had no idea where it was at the day before. The day before.
Yeah, no.
Right. If you'd have asked me on July 3rd where the fire department was at, I was like, I don't know.
No idea.
Up the street, I'm pretty sure.
Somewhere.
Anyway, yeah. This one woman, Carolyn, actually was the one who took Blake from me, and she was the one who was in the back of the engine with him, or the ambulance, the medic that took him. And anyway, she was just so wonderful. All of them were so wonderful, and we made sure that we had their information when they dropped us off at the hospital the first time. And I just knew that I wanted to at least acknowledge them. I didn't know what was going to happen with us, but I knew I wanted to acknowledge them. And I really feel like first responders are so amazing, and it's such a thankless job. And they become strangers to you because they're there in those moments and then they disappear. And I didn't want that to happen. Like, no matter what, I knew I was going to thank them somehow, or I was going to stop by, or I don't know. But I got the information, and that has just become a practice for us, that on holidays or on special occasions that we would bring treats to them or cookies or get them a dessert or something and, thank the people who are there. And so anyway, we had gone back and told them that Blake survived. And there were a few people working that day on their shift that remembered that call. And anyway, so they told the people at the station that this party was going to happen on 4th of July. And they said, if we have an opportunity, we'll bring the engine by. And so we didn't know if that was going to happen or not, but it was definitely emotional because that was the park and that was the fire engine that was there for us exactly a year before. And then what was really special, that woman, Carolyn, the medic, was not working that day, but she came and just wanted to meet us. And she has reiterated that in her 30 plus year career, that our story is one of the ones that has affected her greatly and deeply. So anyway, we have even created a beautiful friendship with her. She's just amazing. But it was special to have the engine there. It was special to have the people show up with gifts for Rady's. and to be able to celebrate at that time Blake being healthy and, you know, just kids interacting with each other. So that was a really special day.
That was a very special day.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, you just telling that story, so like chills from head to toe. It was really something magical that happened that day. And we were all just so grateful to be together and be with Blake. And
Even
so
the people whose house we ran into,
oh yeah,
they came, and it was, I mean, the man put Blake on his shoulders. It was like it was his grandkid, and he was parading him around, like so proud that he was doing all right, you know? Anyway, it was sometimes complete strangers, but you realize how connected we are just through the human spirit, you know?
right. Absolutely.
Anyway, yeah, thank you for being there too.
Oh my God, of course. We were so happy to be there. Such a great day. And so life has changed. And then unfortunately, I mean, you're on this wild roller coaster that is just insane. And it takes another turn.
Yes.
And this would have been fall of 2018.
December.
Yeah, December
9th.
9th?
December 9th of 2018. And yeah, I had actually just had hip surgery. We had been putting it off because we thought, how the heck are we going to manage me being down for the count, basically, with all of this going on? And we thought we finally got to the point where we were getting into a rhythm. It took a year. It took a year. And we finally felt like we were finding our groove and could manage it. And this was the time for me to take care of myself. So I had a surgery. We're now, 2 weeks later. I am in bed in the morning, and Rob is out here on the couch with the kids, and all of a sudden the bedroom door flies open, and I can hear the panic in Scarlett's voice, and she says, "Mama, Daddy needs you." And it was just you have to get out to the living room. And so I'm like, I could tell just by the way that she said it that there was something really wrong. And, you know, I'm like trying to reach my crutches and like hobble out to the other room as fast as I can. And here we are entering the next nightmare.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a normal Saturday morning or whatever it was, and the kids were playing, you know, and I don't know exactly what happened because they were down at the end of the hallway. I heard a door. I know that much. I heard an ow and some tears.
Stubbed a toe.
Opened the door across the top of his foot. I'm not really sure. Nothing was cut. Nothing was bleeding. I don't know. So he seemed slightly off at that point in time. I got up. I got him. Brought him back to the couch. Sat him down with me. And he was saying, ow, something hurt. And I said, did you hurt your foot? And he said, yes. And then he kind of like held his chest and he said, ow. And I said, does your chest hurt? And he said, yes. And I said, but does your chest hurt or does your foot hurt? And I was just trying to figure out like what the hell was going on. So, I mean, obviously, I'm not a doctor in any way, but I'm assuming at that point in time he was having a heart attack. So I laid him down. He had kind of stopped breathing. Everything was happening. Laid him down on the floor. When he stopped breathing, I gave him a couple rescue breaths. Scarlett went and got Leah, got her out. She called 911. Station 24 barged in. Leah's outside with Scarlett. I got Blake inside. And at that point in time, he had kind of stabilized enough to where, he was breathing on his own again and all that stuff. So, yeah.
Surprisingly, though, it was the same medic, Carolyn, that was on that day.
Yep.
And when I was outside, I said, Carolyn, and she just looked at me, and I said, it's Blake. And she just grabbed my hand, and she was like, we got this. We got this. And anyway, she came in here, and anyway, they worked their magic, got him into the ambulance again, had stabilized him. This time Rob went in the ambulance and I met them down there. By the time we were down there, totally fine. He was totally fine. Breathing room air, all good.
Yep.
And it was, I don't know. he was totally fine. The thing with this disease is that you're totally fine until you're not. So he looked and acted like a totally normal, regular kid until his body couldn't take it anymore, and then it just shut off. And there was no way to predict like when that was going to happen.
Right.
So what happened at this time is we were admitted. They did not do the cath this time, but they did an echo. Even though he had been all his medications and we had thought things were moving in a good direction and everything seemed to have been stabilized, they said that his pressures were actually worse than when we first got there the first time, and we weren't going to be leaving the hospital. And they said, unfortunately, we can't do anything for him here. He's going to need a lung transplant if he has any chance at survival. And so we are talking with Texas Children's Hospital, and we're going to figure out how to transport you.
So just to circle back on that, with the pulmonary hypertension, so the lungs being very low pressure. So your body blood pressure is 100, whatever the case, your lung blood pressure is usually like a third of that.
Right.
So in a kid his size, like his body might be like 90 over whatever, then his lungs would be like 30, somewhere in there. Well, his body blood pressure was 100, and his lung blood pressure was 125.
Oh my
And
gosh.
ultimately what happens is when you get pissed, when you bear down, when you anything like that, because there's so much pressure there, nothing goes in, nothing can push past that pressure. So nothing goes in the lungs to oxygenate, and then from the lungs, it goes out to the body. So if nothing goes in the lungs, there's nothing to come out, there's nothing to circulate, and you die.
Wow.
So
Terrifying.
Terrifying, to say the least.
Yep.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
And so this was just the next chapter. So how do we get to Texas Children's? We were ultimately medically flown, but then it wasn't just our life being turned upside down. It was leaving our support system. We don't know anybody there. We're going someplace we've never been, and we're going from a medical team that has become our family to a medical team that we've never met or never even, contemplated corresponding with. I mean, our team had... We knew that in Blake's lifetime, there was going to be a possibility of needing a lung transplant. We knew that was a possibility. Nobody expected it to happen when it happened. Mm-hmm. And so they had been sending his files to the transplant team. So he wasn't totally brand new, but it just nobody thought it was going to be this quick. And so I was ultimately medically flown with him there. Rob flew commercially, met us there later in the day, and it was right before the holidays. And then we went through a whole another saga because it was a brand new team and everybody was leaving for the holidays. So we had a circus of people coming through the next day trying to get in a lot of their evaluations and do what they need to do. And then it was like crickets for a week and a half through Christmas and New Year's because the transplant person and the surgeon both had vacations planned. And so they were gone. And so here we have this kid that we don't know what's happening or if things could change at any minute. And we don't have the people or the resources that we need. And extremely alone, just kind of trapped in this new ICU building. And that hospital is literally a city in and of itself. We were in one tower of several. And now you just feel unseen.
Yeah, you're just another...
Right. You're just
another number.
You're a number. I mean, you're a case number. And anyway, it was all just really scary and hard. And ultimately, so we were there for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. We endured this transplant evaluation. And on January 1st, really, everybody kind of came back and we were assessing what was going to happen and we were going to have to do an intervention of sorts. We still had not received the verdict of the transplant yet, but they knew that there was a possibility that even if he got listed, he might not make it long enough for lungs to come available. So they were going to have to do some intermediate intervention in order to hold him over for that opportunity, should he get there. And January 2nd, I think he and I were talking to these doctors the entire day. It was finally all hands on deck. Everybody's telling us, we got to do this. We have to do it tomorrow morning. So they had a slot for us at 7:00 the next morning. And the doctors actually did not have a recommendation. They had 2 procedures that were possibilities. Both of them, there was no guarantee he was going to make it through the surgery. And they both had different types of outcomes. And now we're frantically trying to fly our family in. Like, we need people here, get here, booking flights. And, we spent hours upon hours that day, just kind of trying to understand what the possible outcomes could be of either of these 2. And anyway, we got back to our room at about 6:00 in the evening, and my sister was there and his mom was there. So we had 2 people at that point in time that had just flown in a few days before. Now, Scarlett was there. As we're trying to kind of wade through this chaos in that moment, I hear Blake again, who's just peacefully playing in his bed. He's doing just fine, like he had been the whole time we were there. Looked very normal. Tell me that his chest hurt. And I immediately turned to the nurse and I said, this is what he said when he went down last time. I'm like, please have people on standby. And I could kind of see people coming around the doors. Like, nobody was like rushing in, but there were people that were assessing from outside. And then it went south. And basically he stopped breathing in those moments. We probably had the most horrific hour of our life. This time, watching this team try to resuscitate our child. And we were, there rooting him on and trying to just be by his side and let him know that we hadn't left him, but that this team needed to be closer to him. And he had made it, through these 4 other times. He had 4 other crises, and, we were hoping that this would be like that. And it wasn't. It wasn't. And so I would say about an hour later, they, pulled us aside and said, we've given it everything we got, and I'm sorry, he's not coming back. And so that was like a really, really horrific period of time. And, here we are in Texas. I'm so thankful that his mom and my sister were there and Scarlett, but then it's also like, oh my gosh, did this just happen? Like we just lost him, like how? And, anyway, that day, we found out within just those moments of having to, through this chaos, that he was unanimously approved to be listed for the transplant list. And it took to that day, and he got the thumbs up from all the people that needed to sign off on it. And there's a part of me, like, I will get emotional thinking about this every single time. Like, why in that moment? He was fine. Like, there was nothing stressing him, or I don't know. And I really just feel like he or his spirit knew that we were going to have to make this decision.
Right.
That we were going to have to choose one of these 2 procedures. And it was going to be painful for us to send him into that situation, just like it was the cath lab, not knowing what the outcome was going to be. And I feel like he made the decision for us.
it is fascinating to think that, because I agree, like that is something that I felt when I heard this story too. It's like he just knew, and you have to trust. I mean, what can you do? There's nothing you guys can fucking do at all.
No.
So how, from that moment, what do you do next?
Yes. Right. Well, I mean, I can say that our family definitely pulled together. You know, again, we're in Texas, and this is, you know, at this point, we had this kind of following that we had been sharing updates about Blake, not regularly. I'm not the parent where it was like, we're heading in for this, you know, I need to tell everybody on social media, you know, we weren't like that at all. I think that we were very thoughtful about what the updates that we were putting out there and what we knew or we felt good about sharing. And at this point, you know, the next day I knew that I needed to acknowledge what had happened. And so I shared out that Blake had died the night before. And again, it was this really weird feeling because we had built this community of people who had been doing good deeds and bringing all this positive energy. And I kind of felt like it was working. Like it was like this crazy social experiment. And all of a sudden, if you do good things happen, you know?
Yes.
And I wanted to believe that was happening and that was true. And I couldn't believe that he died. You know, I was like, what? This is all for shit, for nothing, you know, like nothing came out of this, you know? And that was really hard to grapple with, you know? And I want to believe if you know, you can manifest your destiny and put all the good energy out there and all these things. And that was really a big blow to a core belief that I had.
Right.
And anyway, but we shared it, and what we didn't expect was for this entire community that had rallied around us to be in it with us, to also grieve around us and for us. And this whole movement, for lack of a better word, for Blake of good deeds, it was like people doubled down, you know? It was like, okay, now we are going to make some shit happen. And, you know, that again, surrounding us with this support and this positive energy of people showing up and saying, I see you, you know? And all of a sudden there's all these beautiful things again happening in Blake's name. And, you know, I have to say, one of the things that I'm still always grateful for every day is that while I'm in disbelief that this is our story, and in so many ways I hate our story, that I also feel like we have created this amazing thing that keeps him relevant, keeps him alive. And for people who lose others, you know, people often don't want to say their name or bring them up to a grieving person for fear that they're going to trigger them, or they don't want to ruin the mood, or they don't want to hurt somebody. And so they don't talk about it. And we have the exact opposite, where we want people to say Blake's name. And now people say his name and ask us about him, or say, you know, they did this for him or in his honor all the time. And it's so beautiful. It's so uplifting to us.
And we legitimately, I mean, I would say there's probably not a day goes by where someone doesn't say his name for one reason or the other.
Yeah.
You know, whether it's, oh, he liked this, or, oh, if he was here, he would do that. You know what I mean? It's like we talk about literally every day. Mm-hmm. And so it's very interesting to be around people when it's like, you can tell, like, they're not sure if they should say something.
Right.
It's like, we do it every day.
Yeah.
You know, it's totally fine.
I mean, he is a part of our family. Mm-hmm. He is a part of our decision making every single day. I am confident that our children will grow up thinking about him and want to do him proud, and, that this wave of positivity and energy, it didn't die. And I love that we are surrounded by that, and that it has affected so many in such an amazing way.
Yeah. And so I would love for you guys to share a couple of those stories. And I want to just share we're going to link to these. Look at this baby boy. He is such a handsome guy. I'm totally shaking because I'm just like nervous and talking to you guys. This story is just so emotional. These are kindness cards. And so I'm going to read this. Of course, anybody who's listening, you're not seeing these. You'll have to go to the site and check them out and get some and pass them on, because the whole thing is that you do a good deed, whatever it is, and you leave this behind and you pass it on, and it inspires other people to do the same. And so it says, across the country and beyond is a movement of kindness born from the struggle of this little boy and his family. Though he received his angel wings, the miracle of Blake has forever changed the world as we know it. Join the wave of positivity and pay it forward with your own good deeds. #4Blake. So, I mean, not only did you ask a group of friends and family being like, what can we do for you? You started something that is so meaningful to so many people. I hope people join the Facebook group and see what people are doing, because it's really inspiring, and it does keep going, because we're talking, it's been over 2 years since we've lost Blake. Yeah. And people are so showing up, and it's his birthday month, so we're seeing a lot of activity in there too. 49 billboards, right? Like something like 49 billboards were put up with this about Blake and being kind. He was in Times Square.
Times Square.
Times Square.
Yes.
Which was so amazing. Chills thinking about this. So tell me a couple of the stories, because we could probably spend like hours talking about all the amazing things people are doing. But can you share some of the big ones that really amazed you?
Well, let me start real quick, because I want to say two things. Number one, these are awesome, because so many times you do something and, like right now, you get emotional, you don't know what to say.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to just be like, look, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, pass it on type of thing. And one of the things that does bug me in the world, and I want to just set that straight, and that is, so many times people say, well, doing good things doesn't count if you have to tell people about it. That's what we're asking you to do. People doing nice things and telling us about it keeps our boy alive. Yeah. So ignore that. Don't listen to that. Do something nice.
Yeah.
And tell us about it. Well, put it on the website, because that's how we know about it, and that's what helps us in our day-to-day. So I just sidebar that.
No, I'm glad you said that, because so many people, it's like, they don't want to do it. They don't want to feel like they're patting themselves on the back. And I get it, because it's not natural in so many ways.
So look at it this way. You're not patting yourself on the back. You're lifting our boy up.
Yeah.
Yes.
But especially if you're doing it in honor of him, I don't feel like it's as much about you as it is him. And it should give you the ability to share it, because what we find is that when people do, other people are inspired by it. We never in a million years thought that this would turn into something. Sure. I mean, it was literally to help us through the hospital, and here we are years later. And like you said, I mean, our boy's beautiful face and this message of good deeds was on a billboard, a building in Times Square,
A big building.
Anyway, donated. We have not paid for advertising, and even recently we had a printer here of his story, and they printed kindness cards for us, and it's like, that was their good deed, so I mean, people have really, it's struck a chord, I mean, it tugs at your heartstrings, definitely, but if it gives people a reason to be good or to do something kind, that's amazing. People feel like they're lifted up, and it helps lift us up. So we hope that it continues in that way. But yes, like you said, there's so many incredible stories, and some of them, don't cost any money. There are people who do things that just give their time. We have heard from people, especially this winter, that shoveled snow for somebody, and were able to clear the driveway for their neighbor's car. Or there's the people who want to buy a meal or, buy the coffee for the person in back of them in line, maybe that's $5. People helping someone in a grocery store, lots of opportunities through COVID with people struggling in a lot of different ways. But we had some cool ones. We had a long lost friend, hadn't talked to her in 20 years, and she and her husband went on some exotic vacation a couple years ago, and they were at a place where all of the turtles were hatching, and all the little baby turtles were being released and returned to sea, and they actually sponsored a turtle nest in Blake's name, and plan to continue to do that. And we had somebody else sponsor a lizard at the Prescott Zoo, and just things that meant something to them in the moment. It doesn't have to be about us or what we want to do. It's not a charity of our choice. We're asking people to find things that mean something to them and do it in honor of Blake. Okay, so many stories. It's people who are actually cooking meals and giving them to the homeless. There are one of my favorites is a friend of all of ours who actually decided that for her birthday, in lieu of gifts, that she wanted to have everybody donate a children's book. And so everybody got to donate their own children's book for her birthday, and then she shared Blake's story inside the cover of each of them and put them out in all the free little libraries in her neighborhood. So not only do kids get inspired in the neighborhood around her, but that was the gift that she decided that she wanted, which is incredible.
So on forblake.org, which we'll link to all of this, awesome. You can see people share their good deeds, and you can see it's all over the country, but even different parts of the world where people can add what they've done, right? They can add their good deed, and you can read about some people's deeds on there, right? It's really inspiring. If you're ever having a bad day, go there, read, do something good in Blake's name.
Yeah, there's totally it's pretty cool. There's obviously the story, and then there's a library section where you can read each one of the good deeds. And then the part that I think is the coolest is there's a tracker, you know what I mean? So it's totally little pin drops all over the map, so you can see where all the good deeds take place. And that's pretty cool, because then you get to see how it spreads.
And that's what we would love for people to do. If you do a good deed, then if you share your story, a pin gets applied to the map. So you can actually exponentially just see how much of a difference it's making. But in the Good Deeds library, just like you said, if you're having a bad day, just spend 5 minutes on this page. You can scroll through hundreds of stories, of good deed stories, of people doing positive things for people they know and for absolute strangers. And it's amazing.
I think that there's nothing better than them doing a good deed in Blake's name in the month of April, especially. We want you to do them all the time, right. But we've got a birthday on April 21st. So I just want to challenge anybody who's listening, do a good deed in April. It's amazing how you can feel so much better when you do give to somebody. And I think especially right now, I just feel like there's a lot of hurt and division and hate in the world that can we just put all that aside? And look, I'm not trying to be a little peacemaker over here, but if we can give a little bit more love in the world and do something good and leave one of these behind so you can inspire somebody else, you don't have to tell the story. The story's on here. They can go to the site. They can learn and be inspired. It's really amazing what Rob and Leah have done for Blake. And I'm just really feel special to know you guys because you're such an inspiration to this world. Blake's name will surely be living on for a long time and tied to something really beautiful with what you guys are doing. So I just love you guys. I so appreciate you. And I want to ask, so of course we want people to celebrate Blake in his birthday in April, and do a good deed. We also, if you feel like donating too, that's always a good way to give back. Rob and Leah aren't asking for this. I just want to put links in for Rady's Children's Hospital as well as the Ronald McDonald House. So all those links are going to be on the site. crystaluncorked.com/Blake is where you can find everything. If somebody is listening that has lost a child, especially if it is new, what kind of advice do you have to offer?
That is a hard question. And sadly, we know a few people who have lost children since we have lost Blake, and it's still hard to come up with how to console them or what to do. Every person deals with it differently, and everybody wants to handle it differently. But I would say to those parents, be good to yourself. Have some grace. I can say
it doesn't go away.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't go away, but it does change. You learn to carry it. And, I would suggest with any loss, you find a way to keep them alive for you, whatever that looks like for you.
Be prepared because it's going to hit you out of the blue for no reason whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to cry. It's okay to be sad.
And hopefully allow the people who are willing to support you to support you.
That's great advice, guys. Thank you so much. My heart is just broken and sending a ton of love. It's a weird, broken yet full, which I bet you guys feel that in a way. Yeah.
I don't ever know how to describe it because it's the most horrific thing we could have ever endured. I really can't imagine doing this again or much worse. And the most beautiful light on the other side. We live in these extremes, but we're grateful to have that other side.
Yeah. I'm grateful for you guys, your time today. Can we do another cheers to Blake? Happy birthday, bud.
The little guy's birthday.
Happy birthday, bud.
And to you, Crystal.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, like I said, I'm going to link to everything. Join the Facebook group, too. You guys are such an inspiration. I love you dearly. And I'll see you on the next CU, everybody. Have a good day. Go do something kind.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening. Are you on Instagram? I'd love to see pictures of you listening to the show, a screenshot of your favorite episode, and/or your favorite wines. Share them with me. Just follow and tag @CrystalUncorked. I can't wait to see you there. All right, I'll see you on the next CU.